listeners, welcome to another one of our Black Country Coaches Club coaching conversations. We partnership with our technical support with BRM Solutions. I have another fantastic guest for us today to have a chat with, pick out some insights and see a little bit about what helped him be successful in his journey within coaching. So it's my good friend Martin. Say hi, Martin. Martin Harrison.
Hello, everybody. Hope you're all well and staying safe.
Yes, very important there. Martin, just a quick one, just to kind of set the tone. What job do you do now? What is your job in football?
I currently work at Manchester City Football Club as technical director of the Girls Academy.
Okay, thank you very much. So, you didn't just get that job though, did you? You didn't just like do a level one and then you became that job. So, shall we start with, how did you get into coaching?
I can't actually remember how long ago it was now. It'd probably be about 18, 20 years ago. I started to do, I did my first level one in Birmingham in the Midlands. And the reason why I wanted to do it because my son was just getting into football and I just wanted to coach his team.
Okay, so you had a rationale, your son was starting to play or showing interest in football. So you took the steps like many of our listeners are now. There could be students or grassroots coaches of, I want to be a part of this journey of coaching.
Yeah, definitely. I'd never seen it as a profession. It was more a case of just to secure some knowledge and understanding for my son's football.
So like myself, you've been coaching for around, 20 years. And over that time then, something I've said on other podcasts is football wasn't really a job, was it? And you've mentioned it there. So going from getting what was I think it was called the FA Junior Team Managers then, wasn't it? Going from that to now being technical director of Manchester City, how did that happen? What do you think has kind of generated your interest from originally doing that level one? What did it spur on with you to do?
I suppose I did my level one originally and thought, okay, that's just taught me to put on a safe session. Okay, that hasn't taught me anything about coaching. And having played a little bit when I was younger and going into my adult years, it was like, well, actually that's not taught me anything new. So then I thought, well, I'll do now. I'll go and take my level two. So I did my level two, and whilst I was doing my level two, I met a guy called Tom Stack, which a lot of people in the Midlands will know really well. Yeah. And at the time, he was doing some work with the Aston Villa women's programme, and he's now gone back there, funnily. But he sort of said to me, look, would you be interested in volunteering and coming along and doing a couple of sessions with the girls programme? So basically, I went along, offered my services, did that for free, and worked with a number of different teams just to get a little bit of experience, get a bit of understanding, but fundamentally to help me on my level two journey.
So you volunteered to help your qualification.
Yeah.
And many of the coaches who kind of might be starting out their pathway or, already coaching like you were with your own son. The key word was son. You went to coach girls football. Now, girls football's like mainstream nowadays, but 20 years ago, Mark, it was a bit different. What was the differences that you found with coaching girls to boys?
You're spot on, Russ. It was very, very different. At the time, there weren't very many girls' teams. Aston Villa had had a programme running for a few years, and they were trying to make it a little bit more professional. They'd got the women's team that were in what would now be classed as the Women's Super League. They'd got a women's team that were competing at that level against, some of the best players in the country. And they got this junior program that sort of wasn't part of it. It was more a part of it, but it was just beginning on its journey. So some of the current players that are playing in the WSL for Villa were at that Aston Villa team when they were younger.
Okay. So you're coaching Aston Villa. At what point then did you think, do you know what, this could be a job?
Oof. If I'm honest, Russ, I volunteered at Villa for probably about 8 seasons, maybe.
Okay.
And then at the time, then Aston Villa as a football club, through Duncan Riddle at the time, decided that they were going to take it in-house and not have it as this separate entity that was just using the name and the brand and the badge. So when they decided that we were going to take it in-house, they offered me a position as a part-time role to come in and work on the integration of this girls team into Aston Villa as a football club itself.
Okay. So out of interest then, how did you pay your bills? Because effectively, I suppose one of the things within coaching, whether it be 20 years ago to now, there are lots of part-time roles in coaching, but the full-time ones kind of are a bit rarer. So you said you had a son. Are you working elsewhere as well as your coaching?
Yeah, no. So when I first started coaching, I was working in telecommunications. So I was kind of working in the day, coming home of an evening, going to do a little bit of coaching with my son's team, then going to do a bit of coaching with the Villa girls, and all of that stuff was just as most of your listeners will know, you kind of give up your time to make sure that your kids get the best experience that they can.
Yeah. And that juggling of maybe having your family life, your coaching life, and now you might have get some paid coaching work. Is that hard? Have you found that hard, or is there any tips you might give, or anything that you've thought, you know what, it's not easy sometimes doing that?
It's definitely not easy. I think at one stage I actually had 9 different jobs to accrue enough money to pay the bills. So that was lots of little things added together that kind of helped to pay the bills. And in there that have been coaching soccer schools, that have been coaching mini kickers team. There'd be doing a little bit of scouting. They'll be working in a university program. They'll be working with a college program or a school program. So lots of little things that just kind of came together. So I think the one bit of advice is to be as planned and prepared as you possibly can be. And I know that's difficult when you've got a family and you've got a home life and everything else. But you need to have. I had a Google Calendar that with everything different, with different colours, so I knew I was moving from one job to the next, and that was the only way I could kind of just keep on top of everything.
Well, I've been there. I understand exactly what you're saying. And I suppose from knowing my audience here, there's kind of two reams to this. So I often get a coach who might coach grassroots, just like yourself. They've done stuff with their kids who go, do you know what? I'd really like to change my life and not do the job I do anymore, but coach full time. And often my advice is, well, there's stuff out there, but don't give your job up until you have enough of that work. And that balancing act is kind of a key one. And then with the other audience, which I work with the student coaches, sometimes a lot of the part-time work is just as good as one full-time job. It's probably better, really, because you have the choice and the freedoms. Because coaching, and you've been involved in coaching for 20 years, as have I don't think I've ever had a coaching job that's been 9 to 5 and set hours. Have you ever had that?
No, never. The closest thing I had to it was I worked in a community program at Aston Villa, which that was one set of money. But then obviously my work in the female game was a different set of money that would come on top of that. So it was coming out of two different pots. So I've never actually had a situation whereby I've been able to start at 9 and leave at 5. Ever.
And this is the industry we're in, isn't it, really? And like, as life changes, so as a young man, so let's say when you were younger with your son's example, there's probably friends and partners and people that you have that's gone, yeah, but my husband's home every week, or my boyfriend, we can go out on a Saturday. Well, I've kind of never had that either. I've had it at the minute with lockdown, but I've not had it as kind of a consistent. And maybe within your journey of coaching, um, how would you kind of give any advice on tips on managing that? Because, you know, sometimes you have to juggle family, home, or the multiple jobs you got. Is there any kind of advice or bits you've found through your experience in that?
I think having an understanding partner is massively important, and it should never be downplayed. The stability that they can provide, and trying to make sure that when at all possible, you spend and give them time. And it isn't easy. If you're going to work in football at any level, you know, whether that be in the professional game, whether that be in academies, whether that be in grassroots, it is unsociable hours. Okay, and there's no get around to that.
Yeah,
that's just the way it is.
What would you say the importance of not just coaching in talent is? So having a broad range of coaching experiences whilst you can, so whilst you're learning or a student or developing, what would you say the importance of that is?
But the importance of having knowledge of other areas of the game, or the importance
Yeah,
of
so
different
if
experiences.
the experiences and other areas of coaching or the game really. So I suppose I'll go with my knowledge of yourself here. So I know, for an example, in my own career, doing things like turn up and play football was really important to help build relationships. But on the other hand, I'd work like you did within a performance environment at the same time. But I think the relationship stuff really helped me with the performance stuff. So, what would you say about that kind of broad range of working with people, as should we say, that can aid a pathway if you want to work within talent and performance settings?
Yeah. I mean, that's absolutely massive. I think working with as many diverse groups as you possibly can, because what you'll find is, as you move higher up the game, you will meet those diverse people again. Okay, so whether that's working with disadvantaged children, okay, and trying to understand the challenges that they face in getting to training, being able to be consistent in turning up to training, being able to behave for, or what we perceive as behaving for a period of 60 to 90 minutes, depending on how long your training session is. I think understanding tactics and skills of how to communicate with those people, how to build a rapport with them, being able to kind of share some of your own knowledge and your own background, and help and understand what different circumstance they come from, or what challenges they face, is massively important. And now I'm using those same skills now in a performance environment, just in a different way.
So, Martin, question to you is then, those people skills and experiences that you've had, how do they help with working in talent? Because a good example may be not every person, child, will become a professional footballer. How have those experiences shaped, I suppose, the negative side of the game?
I think building a rapport with everybody is important. I think the at the highest end of the game, I think the current set of numbers are 0.005% make it through. So we've got to think in every academy, a very small amount of players end up coming out the other side and playing the professional game. But the one thing that we can all do is help these players become better people and better citizens, and to understand that everybody's journey is different and everybody's pathway is different. So being able to build rapport with the players, build rapport with the parents, build rapport with other clubs, because what you might find is that some of the other clubs in your locality might be able to help and support and guide the player on their next step of their journey. And then understanding that the challenges that are faced, and being empathetic when we get to that situation whereby they're not making it onto the final rung of the ladder, if you like.
These things that you're describing to me, I've not heard the word once football, tactics, or interventions, or any of the kind of the go-to words you would hear in coaching. They're very much people skills. And I suppose whether you work within grassroots and you have to pick 7 players to start, or talent and one player gets signed and one player doesn't, it's a really underpinning theme of being a coach. How you can have a relationship with your customers, which might be your players, but B, your secondary customers, those in support around of it, parents or grandparents or carers, etc., is big. And what Martin's kind of reiterating there is I think what you're saying, Martin, is trust and respect underpins all the relationships.
Yeah, I think honesty is also another word that I would throw in there, Russ. Because if you're not honest with people, and people don't understand that, there's that saying, people don't care what you know until they know that you care. So I think being honest, empathetic and caring goes a long way. And it doesn't matter at what level of the game, whether that's very beginning, young players at 4, 5, 6, going right the way through to senior pros, senior international pros.
Absolutely. So if we link to honesty then, so one of the things that I often see, especially in the grassroots environment, is we will get your child a trial or something that's turned up and play that's called an academy. What's your thoughts on these things?
I think everything has its place. And I think it's for parents to make a judgment on whether that's the right thing for their child to be going into, but they need to be going in with their eyes wide open, rather than looking at the starry bit at the end. So I think if we're looking at independent academies as opposed to professional academies, then being aware that, is my child going to be safe when they're there? Are they going to learn things and are they going to have fun? I think those bits are really important.
Absolutely. Could you just repeat for me again the statistic? So if there's a child or someone who's listening right now might be thinking, do you know what? I'm coaching, but I'm not really thinking about the fun or the safe stuff. I'm kind of more interested in making a player. What's the stat again that might be led to a professional player?
If I'm honest, I'm not 100% certain, but I believe it's 0.005%.
So there is a chance, folks. However, that big point about, are they happy? Do they enjoy it? And is it, safe? And maybe developing those social skills, mental and physical skills along the way is really key. I think is the key, and everyone's got 100% chance of doing that, rather than the small chance of the professional athlete. I'd probably reiterate.
Yeah, I think the importance of them being a citizen afterwards, is key, because
absolutely.
If they can come and make friends, then it's showing that they're able to communicate and they're able to get along with people. And you know what?
And if they do get a chance later on, that's going to help, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's going to help in the job as well later on in life. Definitely.
Well, it is something that recruiters do look for, young people that are able to take part in a team environment and can show skills of working with others, will always have more opportunities to go forward.
It's a really good point you've made, and I'm going to link to a question that I've had in from one of the grassroots coaches, which is Tom from Kingsley, who said, what do recruiters look for? So I know it's a really minefield subject, this. So if I were to say to you within a minute, what have you come across that people who recruit potential talent look for in your experience?
I've met a lot of different recruiters, and I've been part of recruitment processes. We've got to remember, recruitment isn't just about bringing in. Sometimes it's about moving on. So there are lots of things. Obviously, you have your basic fundamental technical skills. Dependent on the age, would depend on whether or not you need to know tactical information. So obviously, the older up the age group or moving into international programs, that the need for some sort of tactical knowledge. Physically, how is that player able to cope with various different situations and scenarios? Socially, how do they get on with their peers? How do they get on with their coach? What do their peer groups think about them? And then psychologically, how do they deal with adversity? So how do they deal with things when they aren't going well? So looking at, if they make a mistake, how does it go? If a coach suddenly on the side of the pitch starts shouting at them, how do they deal with that? But then sometimes you have the flip side of that. How do they deal with praise? Because all children deal with these things in very different ways. And I think those soft bits of intelligence, in a lot of cases, are as important as the technical, tactical stuff.
So coaches listening, you'd be aware of the FA's 4 corner model as an example, and planning for individuals or specific outcomes based on that, which could be, psychological, like Martin said. So confidence as an example, or decision making, is just as important as the technical and physical sides, really. And is that something that you embrace within the setting you work now?
Yes. Yeah, so making sure that each of the players, it doesn't matter at which level, he's able to kind of work with challenge. So they're able to deal with decision making. So every session has elements of decision making, and it's not a one size fits all situation or scenario. We try and encourage each player to be asked questions, and for them to ask questions of us to aid their learning. Obviously, from a physical standpoint, we have some very specific areas that we like to focus on as a football club, okay, which may be different to what another football club would want. But we have some very specific bits. But we also have to take into account each individual, and based on the positions that they play, or the positions that they could potentially move to in the future. But that only really comes when we're looking at 14, 15, 16-year-olds with regards to the position-specific stuff.
Something I either A, nicked off you, or B, I nicked off someone else, I can't quite remember, was plan for the next 10 years or coach for the next 10 years, not the next 10 minutes. Do you think that that's something effectively that a lot of coaches do in your experience, or is it something that could be a good thinking point based on the conversations we've had so far?
No, definitely. Planning for the next 10 years is actually the most important bit. Certainly in the environment I'm currently in, because if I think about where the game was 10 years ago, and for everybody on the call will all know what the Premier League looked like 10 years ago. So if we go back to what the Premier League looked like 10 years ago, when you had your Alan Shearers playing and all that sort of stuff, and then you look at where the game is now currently, there's been a lot of change. So if we only coach for what's happening today, we're not helping our young children. Okay, so if we start planning for what the next 10 years could look like and put our crystal balls out there and say, right, this is what I perceive as the next 10 years is going to look like, it helps to give us a roadmap of where we need to get to, but also understand that we haven't got to do everything today. And these young children, for a lot of the coaches on here, will probably look after young children that are in under 9, 10, 11, 12. Well, actually, we're not expecting them to be serious footballers by the time they're 22, because the average age in the highest leagues now is 25, 26.
Something to think about there, folks. Definitely with your planning is what could it look like and what the future of football might look like, and especially with the physical and mental side of football is really different. You don't know whether people are there for a release or social side, or are they there because of the wanting to improve them skills and self-develop. I think it really underpins the getting to know them and using those personal skills to help to that. I'm going to link to something you said, Mark, that preparing your children or developing for the next 10 years. I know that fundamentals and the skills of multi-skills, so the basics of walking, throwing, catching, kicking as example, is something that has research behind it to say it develops better athletes, but more importantly fitter human beings who are less likely at risk of problems in older life. One of your jobs that you did have, you did some work with like really young age children. Would you mind just sharing us about that?
Yeah, so with that one, we were looking after 3, 4, 5-year-olds. And when I say looking after it, it is very much a babysitting type thing, isn't it? I think the one thing that we tried to do was involve the parents as much as possible. So if we can help the parents to understand fundamental movement, then they can help their child, because they spend a lot more time with the child than anybody ever will in a coaching session. So to understand a little bit about being able to stand on one foot, being able to balance, being able to walk across balance beams, being able to, in the old days, we used to walk across logs and climb trees and walk across big branches and all that sort of stuff, or jump across streams and all that sort of stuff, which kids don't get the opportunity to do. So it's about creating those fun environments for children to be able to go and enjoy movement, and then by adding it to music just makes it a lot more fun. So in certainly when we first started doing those little children's groups, having music that they could associate to, so whether that be Postman Pat, whether that be it's been a while since I've done all that stuff now, so Postman Pat or Peppa Pig or whatever, making it kind of something that they could relate to.
Definitely.
I think it's
really
important.
I know a lot of the clubs do mini kicker type things.
Yeah.
So, most charter standard clubs, for an example, would have something like that, or some sort of turn up and parent type thing like that you're suggesting there. And using those fundamentals, musics, imagination, should we say, but involving the parents is something that's I've definitely seen in my work, because I used to do something similar years ago in Codsall. But I think it's a key point. How often do we involve parents in what we're trying to do, and giving them a bit of ownership and alignment to it, because they are the ones that see them for longer, aren't they?
And I think that's really, even at the highest end of the game, that's really important, because it doesn't matter how, if a child's in a professional academy, they will still spend more time with their parents than they will with you in a professional academy. So having that support from the parents is key.
Absolutely, and I think it underpins our previous point about personal skills, trust, honesty. It's easier to kind of get the working relationship going, isn't it? Okay, well, I want to talk just a little bit about your working life. So you've had many roles that's led to where you are now. In the roles you've had, have you come across the same people more than once, but in different jobs?
Yeah, so this is a really good question, and it has been something that I've kind of, I did a piece of work during this year, actually, linked to another course that I was doing, just based on network and the amount of times that you come across the same people, just in different roles. So if I look at our relationship, Russ, I think we've worked together on 4 different occasions, and for me, it was when I was in 4 different jobs, and I know that you'd had a couple of different jobs in that time. Then, I've also done quite a bit of work with Dave Stevens, and again, across multiple roles, multiple jobs, we've linked together on a number of different things. And I think I would say yes, definitely. There's probably 5 or 6 different people and there's a lot of people that I'm currently working with now, that I had a previous relationship with, whether that be through coaching or whether that be through something else. And I don't think it can be underestimated, the value of those relationships that you have with every single person that you meet. And if you think back to our first relationship, Russ, it was when we were both working for different clubs, and it'd be very.
I'll add a bit of insight here for a bit of a laugh. So I used to work for West Bromwich Albion. Martin used to work for Aston Villa. Now, we both had female sections of football teams, and to make this a bit more funnier, the deal was that the Villa players or teams were often of a higher caliber than the Albion teams back then. So I used to judge myself on whether we'd done a good job if they got a place in Martin's academy. So that was kind of our relationship, really. Were they good enough to go to Martin? Now, obviously, we didn't advertise that, but it was something that was a real benchmark of quality and a pat on the back to you, really.
Yeah, I mean, I think the important bit, Russ, is it'd be easy for us as competitors to get a little bit more excitable, shall we say, when it's coming to game time. But the fact we were able to build a relationship, even though we were on opposing teams, and then that relationship has continued on into different jobs, I think is really important.
Absolutely,
especially
network. Yeah. How many people look at the other coach as the rival rather than someone trying to do the same thing?
Yeah,
is big. For the students listening on here, network's everything. And Martin's just described there, 3 or 4 individuals who are all doing work within football-related environments who have had different jobs. Your network will be developing now, and keep those contacts, networks, because you never know when you're going to come across them again. I think is the key bit. And what relationship did you have with them to was it a good one, or is it something that you need to build? Is a key thing, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. You know, I think for the university students, there's a doctor that I've got to know through delivering talent ID programs, called Dr. Dan Parnell, who's got a lot of work published, which as a student you'll be able to kind of research some of his bits in it, and he does talk a lot around the importance of a network, and how to build one and how to reinforce one, which will make good reading, certainly for those doing degrees.
Definitely, your network's everything. Okay, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions from our kind of audience. So here's a question from Rich. Rich is a coach at Cuford. He also coaches futsal as well. So the question is in a talent ID setting, how do you spot the best? Or is it the best of today or the best that could be in the future? What's kind of the balance in what that might be?
I think with all of those things, you've got to add context to every situation. So it is the best for what would be my question. So, you know, you're talking about Cuford. Cuford's a really good club that's got some really good facilities. So is it for Cuford? Is it for you spoke about futsal there. So is it for the futsal? You know, because if you're selecting somebody for Cuford and you want the best for Cuford, that might be very different to the best person for Birmingham United futsal, as an example.
Yeah. So context or measure of what the performance or the outcome or opportunities might be a real variable there.
Yeah, and try to understand what specifically the environment you're working in needs and wants. And obviously those are two different things. So there's a need situation, or is it a want and I want this as a model? I think is also really important.
Okay, thank you for that one. Jack is a student. Jack has a question. In your role, have you ever met Pep? And if you did you learn anything from him?
Yeah, I've met him to say hello. Okay.
To say hello.
And you see him around site, and you can say hello. There's loads of stuff that's published, and then there's loads of stuff that you can see on the internet that you can learn about Pep. And the one thing that he does is, it doesn't matter whether you're a cleaner, whether you're a cook, whether you're a first team player, whether you're an academy player, whether you're a women's player. You know, he will treat everybody exactly the same, which kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier on. He will be as polite with anybody that he meets.
Yeah, from my experience with Gareth Southgate as an example, that's something I've definitely seen. Always would say hello. Doesn't matter whether you're at St George Park as a guest, player, someone's grandma, whatever, always has time for you. And I think that's a good thing that you mentioned there with Pep. And often more successful people in life are those who treat people as they want to be treated, really. And I think that's something we learned from Gareth Jennings last week as well.
Yeah.
Tom has a question for you. Tom is another coach. Tom runs a multi-sport kind of business and also coaches grassroots football. So the question from Tom is, what's the best way to get into Talent ID? Is there like a formal pathway or a way that you can start out in this role?
There isn't a formal pathway. Obviously, by doing courses, and the fact there's now a course structure in place. So obviously the FA have the Talent ID Level 1, which is an online course, which anybody can do. Then the FA have got a Talent ID Level 2. There are other companies that also do courses, you know, and they all have a value and a place to play. I think it's important that you understand, one, why you want to get into Talent ID. Is it because you want to help young people, or Is it the fact that you want to have a badge and you want to have a title? I think once you know that that's why, then you can start to be signposted towards which particular groups that you should be looking to recruit or work with. Because obviously, a majority of recruitment that takes place is for the younger age groups. So looking for those 5, 6, 7-year-old boys or girls, now that need to be given an opportunity and a chance and all that sort of stuff. A lot of clubs now are going down the line of development centres, which suddenly become the feeder in towards the academy. And that's become an avenue, a real avenue for people starting out in recruitment, because they'll kind of get to know who runs those development centres, give them a recommendation. I'd like to recommend this child because they show these sorts of skills or attributes. And I think, considering if you're going to make a recommendation to somebody, consider why you would recommend them. What is it about that particular person that you like? What attributes do they have that match your values? And then when you're looking at that person, is there a bias on your part, or is it the fact that you're desperate and you just want to get I just want to get a child signed in there? Yeah. I think all of those things are kind of really important.
Last question then from the floor is from another student. He's called Raymond. His question is it beneficial to coach other sports to help develop you as a football coach?
I think, yeah, it's an interesting one. So coaching other sports doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to help you become a better football coach. I think getting on a grass or on a sports hall or whatever, and actually coaching is really important. I think there's a lot to be learned from watching other coaches work in other environments. So if you look around most professional games now, coaches and clubs go out and look at other environments. So as an example, I've known of some football clubs that have gone into horse racing. See, right, well, how a thoroughbred horse is trained, okay, which obviously very, very different to coaching a group of footballers. But there would still be some similarities in there, because you're talking about working with elite athletes. Yes, one might have 4 legs and one might have 2, but actually understanding what challenges they face, how they've overcome some of those, how to coach different types of people. And it was like we said earlier on about coaching different environments. So, coaching grassroots environment to elite, coaching a kicks type session as opposed to coaching an elite type session. I think being out there and coaching and trying to understand why coaches that coach a sport do it in such a way, I think that's a massive help. And then it's not just about coaching netball as opposed to football. It's also around working with the one thing that I've learned over the last 5 years really is the importance of multidisciplinary teams, and the importance of knowing how a strength and conditioning coach works. And not seeing them as, oh, they're the strength and conditioning coach, that's what they do, and just kind of leaving them to it. I think knowing and understanding how and why a coach does what they do certainly helps to shape your practice. And something that we do within the club is link up the multidisciplinary team. So working with strength and conditioning coaches, working with psychologists, working with the medical team, working with the nutritionists, working with the player welfare. So it's not just about turning up on the grass and you've got your 90 minutes and away you go. It's about linking in. How can I help and support all of those other things within my 90-minute session, as opposed to being apart from my 90-minute session.
I think that's a really nice point that we can kind of summarize on, really learning from each other, especially in a world where everyone's trying to achieve the same thing in sport. I have more supported young people or athletes or a pathway is really keen, and definitely over my kind of 15, 16 years of knowing you, Martin, it's something I've definitely learned from yourself. So just to finish off then, Manchester City, technical director. What next? Is that something you always want to do? Or is there any ambitions that you have within your coaching? It might be back with your children that you might want to look at in the next 5 or 6 years.
What's next for me? I think I've really enjoyed and I really like working across a wider team as opposed to just working in one area. So I suppose if there was a what next, it would be working with a bigger team to develop and I don't mean a bigger team as in Manchester City. I'm working with a bigger team of people, just to sort of develop, help to develop and shape them. And I think what I'd like to be able to say by the time I finish playing football, or not playing football, by the time I finished in football, is that I could come away from it and say, look, I've helped to shape, and I would never say that I've made all of the difference. But if I can help to shape a number of people to be able to come in and take my job, then I've done my job properly. I don't think we can be in a position whereby it's my job and I'm not going to let anybody else in to help and support. What I'd like to happen is over the next few years that we help somebody else come in and take my position, and then, you know, as other positions open up and as the female game grows, which is what it is, you know, then for me it's those moves into other areas to help and develop even more people come into the game and to develop themselves as not only as coaches but to go on to be technical directors and to help and design and develop the game as a whole.
I think that's a really good way to finish off with that. Your network's a part of that, because you might meet some of these people on the way, folks. You might link with people that you met on a course or in another job that they're not in now. And the developing and how they find you on that way is actually, you know, the measure of what might happen in the future and how that works. Martin Harrison, I thank you for your time. We will put in the notes of this podcast when it's launched how to access the football FA Level 1 in Talent ID, if that is something that you want to come across. But Martin, thank you very much for your time this evening.
No, thank you, Russ, and good luck to everybody that's out there.